Bloomberg Audio Studios.
Podcasts, radio, news.
Good morning, I'm Nathan Hager.
And I'm Karen Moscow. Here are the stories we're following today.
Karen, we begin with the latest reaction to those highly anticipated earnings from Nvidia. The shares are down more than 4% in early trading. The AI juggernaut met or beat analysts' estimates on nearly every measure, but Nvidia investors have grown accustomed to blowout quarters, and the latest numbers did not qualify. Moreover, Nvidia's next big cash cow, the new Blackwell processor lineup, has proven more challenging to manufacture than anticipated. Nvidia CEO Jensen Huang spoke with Bloomberg's Ed Ludlow after the company conference call.
We're expecting Q3 to have more supply than Q2. We're expecting Q4 to have more supply than Q3, and we're expecting Q1 to have more supply than Q4. And so I think our supply condition going into next year will be a large improvement over this last year.
Nvidia CEO Jensen Huang says third quarter revenue will be about $32.5 billion. Analysts had predicted $31.9 billion on average, but the estimates ranged as high as $37.9 billion.
Well, Nathan, reaction is still pouring into the Nvidia results and Jensen Huang interview. Mandeep Singh is a senior tech analyst with Bloomberg Intelligence.
It's still a very solid growth story, but when it comes to convincing investors that there are more catalysts for upside relative to where expectations are, I think a lot of it right now is dependent on how the industry actually deploys generative AI. That's what Jensen highlighted, that, look, Gen AI is transformational, it's changing how compute is done, and everyone will use it.
Bloomberg Intelligence senior tech analyst Mandeep Singh notes that most of Nvidia's growth comes from a small group of customers. About 40% stems from a large data center operators, companies like Alphabet's Google and Facebook parent Meta Platforms.
And we're going to have much more coverage of the Nvidia story in a few minutes. We'll bring you more from our conversation with the CEO, Jensen Huang, and that will be followed by analysis from Wedbush Securities senior equity research analyst Dan Ives.
Well, Nathan, Nvidia is not the only stock on the move this morning following earnings. Several other high-tech results came in after the bell as well, and we get the latest with Bloomberg's John Tucker. John.
And Karen, CrowdStrike shares down over 2% pre-market trading. The security software company cutting its full-year forecast. However, some analysts said the reduction better than feared. This comes in the wake of the CrowdStrike update. You'll remember that crashed computers worldwide last month. Salesforce gave an earnings forecast. The top analyst estimates. The top maker of customer management software has been trying to deal with activist investors. The company says new higher-priced products with AI are just starting to help boost sales. They're getting a pop this morning of almost 5%. And finally, HP, ticker symbol HPQ, down close to 2.5%. They're cutting their full-year profit outlook. That's because of a continued downturn in its printing unit. John Tucker, Bloomberg Radio.
All right, John, thanks. We're also watching shares of Supermicro Computer. They're down nearly 5% in early trading. That follows yesterday's 19% plunge. Supermicro says it's delaying filing its annual financial disclosures and will need more time to assess its internal controls. This 10-K delay erased more than $800 million from Supermicro chairman Charles Liang's net worth. In fact, his fortune has slumped by nearly 2/3 from its March high.
Well, we turn to the economy now, Nathan. As investors await another key inflation reading tomorrow, the Personal Consumption Expenditures Price Index, a top Fed official is cautioning about moving too fast on rate cuts. Atlanta Fed President Raphael Bostic says he's still looking for additional data before he'll support lowering interest rates next month.
I don't want us to be in a situation where we cut and then we have to raise rates again. Like, that would be a very bad outcome. It would really undermine all the confidence I was talking about people have.
Speaking at the Stanford Club of Georgia, Atlanta Fed President Raphael Bostic reiterated that his timeline for cuts had moved up after inflation fell more quickly than he expected and the unemployment rate increased more rapidly, but he's still cautious.
Let's turn now to geopolitics, Karen. A major development overseas. White House National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan is wrapping up his 3-day trip to China with a visit with the president, Xi Jinping. It is the first time Sullivan's held one-to-one talks with the Chinese leader. It comes hours after his first face-to-face with a top Chinese general. Bloomberg's Jill Desis is in Hong Kong. She says the goal of Sullivan's trip is to set up guardrails.
There's just a lot of uncertainty, too, going into the U.S. election later this year as to who exactly will be the leader after that you're probably looking at this attempt by the Biden administration to kind of future-proof ties with China, or at least stabilize relations heading into that election.
Bloomberg's Jill Desis reporting from Hong Kong. Now, earlier, Sullivan discussed setting up a call between Presidents Xi and Biden with the Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi.
Now let's get to the latest in the presidential race. Nathan, Democrat Kamala Harris is on her second day of a 2-day bus tour through Georgia. She's heading through rural areas with a focus on shoring up support among black men. Harris is also getting ready for her first interview since taking the nomination on CNN tonight. And we get more from Bloomberg's Julie Fine.
It's a very high-stakes moment for her, and she's also taking some criticism because she's not doing the interview alone. She is doing it with Tim Walz. However, at the end of the day, she is going to be the one that has to answer the questions, even if he's just sitting right beside her. So it's high stakes. It's the first time it is that situation. It is a one-on-two.
Bloomberg's Julie Fine reports the Harris campaign is brushing off the criticism, saying former President Trump has also done joint interviews with his running mate J.D. Vance. Tonight's interview airs at 9 p.m. Wall Street time on CNN. And it's time now for a look at some of the other stories making news in New York and around the world. And for that, we're joined by Bloomberg's Michael Barr. Michael, good morning.
Good morning, Karen. The listeria outbreak from Boar's Head deli meat has been linked to 57 illnesses in 18 states and the deaths of 9 people, including 2 in New York and New Jersey. Garshan Morgenstein says his father, a Holocaust survivor, was in good health until he says his dad got listeria after eating tainted liverwurst. Morgenstein says the infection led to meningitis and brain damage.
He always ate lunch meat, always Boar's Head. We're all still in shock for all of the things, that he's seen and been through in his life.
The CDC warns customers may still have tainted meat in their fridge, with best buy dates through October. A Nevada jury has found a Democratic former Las Vegas area politician guilty of murdering an investigative journalist who wrote articles critical of his conduct in office. After deliberating for almost 12 hours, the jury found Robert Tellis guilty of murdering Jeff German of the Las Vegas Review-Journal. Clark County District Attorney Steve Wolfson says the jury sent a clear message.
That any attempts to silence the media or to silence or intimidate a journalist will not be tolerated. That's what occurred in this case.
Clark County District Attorney Steve Wolfson. Jurors set Tellis' sentence at 20 years to life in prison. Tellis denied killing German and instead blamed a broad conspiracy of people for framing him. It won't end tomorrow. That's according to the Israel Defense Force of the raids in the West Bank. The IDF is calling it a counter-terrorism operation. The Palestinian Health Ministry says the raids that began Wednesday have left at least 11 people dead. New York City Mayor Eric Adams announced significant progress in his war on illegal smoke shops. The mayor used a crane to move the more than 4 tons of seized cannabis products that were destroyed in an incinerator at a facility in Westbury, Nassau County. Back in May, New York City launched a crackdown on the sale of illegal cannabis products.
What we have accomplished is exactly what we knew we could accomplish with the right insight and the right focus and determination. 1,000 shops were closed.
The crackdown involves a joint law enforcement effort, including the NYPD, the New York City Sheriff, and other agencies. Global news 24 hours a day, and whenever you want it with Bloomberg News Now. I'm Michael Barr, and this is Bloomberg, Karen.
All right, Michael Barr, thank you. Time now for the Bloomberg Sports Update with John Stashower. John, good morning.
Good morning, Karen. Mets and Phoenix. They fell behind 4-0. Corbin Carroll homered off Luis Severino. The Mets rallied, tied the game 5th inning. 2-run shot for Harrison Bader. They went up 5-4 in the 6th, but in the 8th, Carroll with a grand slam off Edwin Diaz. Arizona won 8-5, and Atlanta keeps winning 5-1 at Minnesota, and the Braves are 4 games ahead of the Mets. Second straight night, Yankees couldn't muster much offense. The night after losing 4-2, they fell 5-2. Carlos Rodon gave up a first-inning homer to Nationals rookie Dylan Cruz, second pick of last year's draft, his first big league homer. Rodon gave up 2 in the first and 2 more in the second. The Yanks stranded 8 in their attempt to come back. Here's Aaron Boone.
didn't do enough the last two nights, just pushing runs across, and so lost the series. So, tough one. You got to regroup on the off day and get ready to start a little quick three today here, but just one of those days where we weren't able to just finish off some rallies.
Juan Soto back where he used to play. He had his worst series, 0 for 12, only drew one walk. Aaron Judge did drive in a run last night, but he did not homer in the series. Baltimore lost to the Dodgers, 6-4. Yanks remain game ahead. Red Sox shut out Toronto 3-0. Battle of division leaders. Houston blanked the Phillies 10-0. Jordan Alvarez hit 3 home runs. And a wild one in Pittsburgh. The Pirates led the Cubs 10-3 in the 7th inning. Cubs scored 11 times in their last 3 at-bats. They won 14-10. U.S. Open last night. Easy wins for Coco Gauff and Novak Djokovic. Earlier, 6 seed Andrei Rublev came back from a 2-set deficit to win. Third round begins today. So does the season-ending Tour Championship Golf in Atlanta. 30-player field by Sunday. There'll be a FedEx champ who gets $25 million. Pittsburgh Steelers named Russell Wilson their Week 1 starting quarterback. He beat out Justin Fields. Patriots coach Gerard Mayo says he'll name his starter today. John Stashauer, Bloomberg Sports. Karen, Nathan?
All right, John, thank you. Well, if you're listening to us in Boston, our new home beginning September 3rd is going to be on 92.9 FM. That is the day after Labor Day, this coming Tuesday. Bloomberg Radio moving to 92.9 FM in Boston.
Coast to coast on Bloomberg Radio, nationwide on Sirius XM, and around the world on Bloomberg.com and the Bloomberg Business app. This is Bloomberg Daybreak.
Good morning. I'm Nathan Hager. We continue our coverage of chip giant Nvidia, the earnings report that Wall Street had been waiting for pretty much all quarter long. The AI chip giant delivered an underwhelming forecast and disappointed with news that it's still ironing out production issues with its newest chips. Bloomberg's Ed Ludlow spoke with the CEO of Nvidia, Jensen Huang, and they began by discussing those issues with Blackwell. We now bring you part of that discussion.
We made a mass change to improve the yield. Functionality of Blackwell is wonderful. We're sampling Blackwell all over the world today. We show people, giving tours to people of the Blackwell systems that we have up and running. You could find pictures of Blackwell systems all over the web. We have started volume production. Volume production will ship in Q4. Q4, we will have billions of dollars of Blackwell revenues, and we will ramp from there. The demand for Blackwell far exceeds its supply, of course, in the beginning, because the demand is so great. But we're going to have lots and lots of supply, and we will be able to ramp starting in Q4. We have billions of dollars of revenues, and we'll ramp from there into Q1, into Q2, and through next year. We're going to have a great next year as well.
Jensen, what is the demand for accelerated computing beyond the hyperscalers and Meta?
Hyperscalers represent about 45% of our total data center business. We're relatively diversified today. We have hyperscalers, we have internet service providers, we have sovereign AIs, we have industries, enterprises. So it's fairly diversified. Outside of hyperscalers, is the other 55%. Now, the application use across all of that data center starts with accelerated computing. Accelerated computing does everything, of course, from the models, the things that we know about, which is generative AI, and that gets most of the attention. But at the core, we also do database processing, pre and post processing of data before you use it for generative AI, transcoding, scientific simulations, computer graphics, of course, image processing, of course. And so there's tons of applications that people use our accelerated computing for, and one of them is generative AI. And so let's see, what else can I say? I think that's that
well, let
covers
me jump in, Jensen, please, on sovereign AI. You and I have talked about that before, and it was so interesting to hear something behind it, that in this fiscal year there will be low double-digit, I think you said, billions of dollars in sovereign AI sales. But to the layperson, what does that mean? It means deals with specific governments. If so, where?
It's not necessarily. Sometimes it deals with a particular regional service provider that's been funded by the government, and oftentimes that's the case. In the case of Japan, for example, the Japanese government came out and offered subsidies of a couple $1 billion, I think, for several different internet companies and telcos to be able to fund their AI infrastructure. India has a sovereign AI initiative going, and they're building their AI infrastructure. Canada, the UK, France, Italy, I'm missing somebody. Singapore, Malaysia, a large number of countries are subsidizing their regional data centers so that they could become able to build out their AI infrastructure. They recognize that their country's knowledge, their country's data, digital data, is also their natural resource. Not just the land they're sitting on, not just the air above them, but they realize now that their digital knowledge is part of their natural and national resource. And they ought to harvest that and process that and transform it into their national digital intelligence. And so this is what we call sovereign AI. You could imagine almost every single country in the world will eventually recognize this and build out their AI infrastructure.
Jensen, you use the word resource, and that makes me think about the energy requirements here. I think on the call you talked about how the next generation models will have many orders of magnitude greater compute needs. But how will the energy needs increase, and what is the advantage you feel Nvidia has in that sense?
Well, the most important thing that we do is increase the performance and efficiency of our next generation. So Blackwell is many times more performant than Hopper at the same level of power used. And so that's energy efficiency. More performance with the same amount of power, or same performance at a lower power. And that's number one. And the second is using liquid cooling. We support air cooling, we support liquid cooling, but liquid cooling is a lot more energy efficient. And so the combination of all of that, you're going to get a pretty large step up. But the important thing to also realize is that AI doesn't really care where it goes to school. And so increasingly, we're going to see AI be trained somewhere else, have that model come back and be used near the population, or even running on your PC or your phone. And so we're going to train large models, but the goal is not to run the large models necessarily all the time. You can surely do that for some of the premium services and the very high value AIs, but it's very likely that these large models would then help to train and teach smaller models. And what we'll end up doing is have few large models that are able to train a whole bunch of small models, and they run everywhere.
And that was the CEO of Nvidia, Jensen Huang, speaking with Bloomberg's Ed Ludlow following the company's earnings. You can catch the entire interview on the Bloomberg Talks podcast. Subscribe to download this and all our high-profile conversations on Apple, Spotify, or anywhere else you get your podcasts. And for more on what we've heard from Nvidia and the stock reaction, we are joined now by Dan Ives, Senior Equity Research Analyst at Wedbush Securities. Dan, good morning. I know you've been out front for quite some time as one of the leading bulls on what you've been calling the AI tech revolution, a second industrial revolution, I think is how you've termed it. After what we heard from the CEO, Jensen Huang, do you have any reservations now?
I mean, Nathan, I'm more bullish today than I probably was 24 hours ago. And I actually think the stock should be up, not down, because of the underlying demand. I mean, Jensen talked about with the Ludlow interview. That's the key here. Demand surging on the enterprise. The outlook for next quarter, maybe on the hair and miss whispers, I think it's conservative, and I think they're going to continue to beat that number. Blackwell issues, I think, are a lot. So in my opinion, this is actually an affirmation of the bullish AI thesis.
Does NVIDIA need to be more specific, though, on where that demand is coming from and how much demand it's expecting going forward?
Look, I think the numbers speak for themselves. I mean, this is historic in terms of what we're seeing from a demand perspective. And I think the conference call last night solidified this is not double ordering. This is not hype. This is a fourth industrial revolution that's playing out right now, being led by Godfather of AI, Jensen and Nvidia.
He said that he's expecting billions of dollars in revenue from the Blackwell chips. A lot of analysts on the call were looking for more specificity on that as well. How much are you expecting that the Blackwell chips could generate in terms of monetizing AI?
From everything we're seeing, it's tens of billions, not billions. And look, Jensen is he's a Grandmaster World Series poker player. He's not going to reveal his playbook, nor should he. But and I think this is important for the rest of tech, there's a multiplier. For every dollar spent on a video chip, we have $8 to $10 for the rest of tech. I believe tech should be up today relative to everything we heard that I think keeps this tech bull market going higher.
Are you going to be reducing your outlook for where the revenue goes as far as not just Nvidia, but other AI players moving forward now that we have gotten something of a less than powerhouse outlook from Nvidia this time around?
Yeah, and that will be the initial knee-jerk, but I think, we talked on your show after Apple's Worldwide Developer Conference. At that point, the stock was 190, sentiment was negative. Here it is 2.5 months later, the stock's 226, and the sentiment's changed drastically. I think it's going to be a similar dynamic with NVIDIA over the coming days and weeks. But again, the bears, they've been negative on this for the last year, and it's a historic run, and I think they'll continue to be negative, trying to grasp at straws.
How important is it going to be for NVIDIA to grow its customer base beyond the hyperscalers, beyond companies like Meta Platforms, to get into something that Ed Ludlow has been focusing on pretty closely, sovereign AI, government, something that Jensen Huang himself has said that he's going to be focusing on, as early as February?
Yeah, look, and I think 20, maybe 30% of what's called $1 trillion of AI CapEx will be the tech players. And you've already seen that. All the stuff from Meta to Amazon, all the hyperscalers, Google. But government, the rest of enterprise, that's what's still on the come. We only have 3% of enterprises that have actually even started to go down the AI journey. That's why I had to get out the popcorn moment. This is LeBron in high school before he went to the NBA.
But are tech companies going to be able to sustain the kind of spending that they've been doing to scale up their AI play?
Well, it's really the ROI. And I think what we're seeing with use cases from Palantir, ServiceNow, I think Salesforce and others, is that it's really just starting. So the ROI is there. And I know it's a big thing that Jensen talked about. They are seeing the ROI. And as you come to see the ROI, that's going to be the next step. And this is not even just started Apple with iPhone 16, which will be the consumer AI revolution.
Are you concerned at all about the delays that we've seen in the next generation Blackwell chips and the trouble that Jensen Huang has acknowledged that he's had getting them to perform the way they need to?
I think that they actually put those concerns to rest last night. They were concerned that could be called $1, $2, $3 billion and moved that. And they actually put those concerns to rest. So I actually think Blackwell issues put to rest, outlook robust. And then when you look overall at these numbers, this should be criticizing Djokovic for losing one game of one set in the U.S. Open.
Got about a minute left, Dan. I think one of the last times we spoke, you said that it was about 9 p.m. in an AI party that's going into the early morning hours. What time is it for you in the AI story now?
I mean, especially, and texts run a lot from then. I'd say it's 9:30, 10 p.m. to where this is. Now, look, is there going to be glass on the dance floor? Does the music stop every once in a while like we saw at Tokyo Black Monday? Yeah. This is going till 4 a.m. in terms of the party, and it's 10 p.m. Not even.
This is Bloomberg Daybreak Today, your morning brief on the stories making news from Wall Street to Washington and beyond.
Look for us on your podcast feed at 6 a.m. Eastern each morning on Apple, Spotify, and anywhere else you get your podcasts.
You can also listen live each morning starting at 5 a.m. Wall Street time on Bloomberg 1130 in New York, Bloomberg 99.1 in Washington, Bloomberg 106.1 in Boston, and Bloomberg 960 in San Francisco.
Our flagship New York station is also available on your Amazon Alexa devices. Just say, Alexa, play Bloomberg 1130.
Plus, listen coast to coast on the Bloomberg Business app, SiriusXM, the iHeartRadio app, and on Bloomberg.com. I'm Nathan Hager.
And I'm Karen Moscow. Join us again tomorrow morning for all the news you need to start your day right here on Bloomberg Daybreak.